When I walked into their room, the first thing I noticed was her laugh, the one she used to save for me. It wasn't loud, just a soft, familiar sound rising behind the cracked door at the end of the hall. A kind of intimate melody that never belonged to strangers. There was music playing too, something low and jazzy, the kind of background noise you only bother with when you're trying to make something feel special. I froze there, halfway between the kitchen and the bedroom, listening to it all stack up. The second thing I noticed was the coat, men's dark gray, slung casually over the back of our dining chair. I didn't own it. I should have been in Chicago. She thought I was. A quarterly meeting ran short, and instead of telling her, I caught the first flight out Saturday morning. No grand gesture. I wasn't planning rose petals or surprise brunch. I just wanted to be home. I missed her. That was all. I unlocked the door quietly. Habit maybe? Or something else. The lights were low. One glass on the coffee table, another on the floor near the couch. Red wine, still wet around the rim. She didn't hear me. I stood in the foyer for a full minute before I moved. I didn't call her name. Didn't make a sound. Just walked soft across the hardwood, heart pounding louder than my footsteps. That's when I heard the laugh again, and a second voice, male, lower. Muted words I couldn't make out, but intimate in tone. I didn't need to hear the details. My gut had already filled in the blanks. I didn't go to the door. I didn't need to see anything more. I turned around, walked back out the front door, and sat in my car without turning the engine on. It was raining, just enough to blur the windshield and soak through my sleeves when I leaned my head against the window. She texted me 6 minutes later. Hope Chicago's going okay. Love you. Miss you already. It took everything I had not to reply, not to call, not to kick in the door and drag truth out of both of them by force. But I didn't. That's not how I move. I don't confront until I've won. Until every word out of my mouth is backed by quiet, airtight facts. So I drove around the block, twice. Then parked 2 streets over and waited for the lights in our house to go dark. I didn't know what I was going to do next, not yet, but I knew one thing for certain. She had no idea I was already home. The next morning, the house smelled like coffee and laundry detergent, that familiar Sunday calm. She was in her robe, folding towels at the kitchen counter like nothing happened. Like she hadn't poured wine with someone else the night before, hadn't laughed like that while I stood frozen in the hallway. She smiled when she saw me, a bright casual grin. Hey, I thought you were flying in tonight? I shrugged, kissed her cheek. Flight changed. Everything go okay? Yeah. Tiring. I held her gaze for just a second longer than normal. Glad to be back. She turned, poured me coffee, and started telling me about some shows she watched. Said she stayed in all night? Said it was boring. I nodded along, feeling the heat of the mug in my hand, watching her mouth move. She was lying. Calmly. Smoothly. Without a flicker of guilt. But here's what she didn't know. I never exploded. I never cracked. I kept receipts. And before I said a word, I was going to make sure I understood everything. She always woke up earlier than I did on Sundays. That morning, I made sure to wake first. I lay there in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling fan turning in its slow, lazy rotation. She was breathing evenly, one arm tucked under the pillow, her back to me. From anyone else's perspective, we looked like a couple deep in their comfort zone. But I was already calculating timelines. Her robe had smelled faintly of cologne when she hugged me. Not mine. Not hers either. Something warmer, muskier, unfamiliar. She tossed it into the laundry before she even finished her coffee, almost too casually. She never did laundry on Sundays. These were small things, I know. Easy to explain away. But when your gut is screaming, your brain starts marking the details like fingerprints at a crime scene. That's what the next 48 hours were for me, collecting prints without gloves. I waited until she left for her yoga class before I moved. She went every Sunday, 9 o'clock sharp. I watched her leave from the upstairs window, yoga mat strapped over one shoulder, car keys swinging. She wore the same tank top she always said was too stretched out for anything but class. I watched her until she turned the corner. Then I went downstairs. The wine glasses from the night before were gone. So was the coat I saw, the one hanging on the dining chair. But there was something she missed. A tiny water ring, left behind on the edge of the wood where his glass must have sat. Barely noticeable. Not a huge revelation, but it was real, physical. She hadn't covered her tracks completely. I took a photo of it. Not because it would mean anything in a vacuum, but because it might later. Details matter. I didn't want digital tricks. No cloning phones, no trackers, no hacking. That wasn't my game, she'd notice. And worse, I'd lose my moral high ground if I ever did need to confront her in public or in court. What I did instead was simpler. I pulled out our shared calendar. We didn't use it religiously, but every now and then she'd log work dinners, girls' nights, or family events so we wouldn't double book. I went back a month, then two. A few odd entries stood out. One just said, "Out, late client MTG. Same night as a charge from Vintner's Corner, a wine bar across town." Another, "Team dinner, don't wait up," which aligned with a $286 charge at a boutique hotel I'd never heard of. A one-night stay. One entry in particular stopped me cold. "Personal day, mental reset." That was the same Thursday I flew home late after a cancelled trip last month. She'd said she was working from home that day. I remembered calling her from the airport, and she hadn't picked up. Back then, I assumed she was in a meeting. Now I wasn't so sure. After lunch, she came home like nothing had changed. She tossed her keys into the bowl by the door and asked if I wanted anything from the grocery store. She was planning to make dinner, pasta, I think. I nodded, told her I'd come with. She hesitated, then smiled. "Sure," she said. "You okay?" I must have looked at her too long. "Yeah, just tired." She reached for my hand. "Long trip?" "Long enough." I watched her smile flicker, just for a second, before she turned back toward the fridge. That flicker told me more than anything else. Not fear. Not guilt. Just calculation. She was watching me too. Watching for how much I knew. That night, I pretended to fall asleep on the couch. She came into the room around 11. Paused in the hallway. I could feel her looking at me. Then she slipped away, back into the bedroom alone. I waited 20 minutes before I got up. Checked her purse. Nothing out of place, except a folded napkin with a number scribbled across the back. No name. Just a 10-digit string. The kind of note you either forget or protect, and she hadn't done either. It had no business being there. I didn't call it. Not yet. I took a picture. Slipped the napkin exactly back into the fold where I found it. Quiet. Precise. Then I lay back down and closed my eyes. At 2:17 a.m., her phone buzzed once. Just once. I didn't look. Didn't need to. Whatever this was, whoever it wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a system. Monday morning, she left for work in a beige blazer and black flats. Conservative, familiar, the kind of outfit that didn't draw attention. She kissed me goodbye and said she might work late. "Quarter-end reporting," she said, like it meant something to me. Like we weren't living in a house with a rotting foundation she kept spraying perfume over. I waited 5 minutes after she backed out of the driveway before I got up from the table. Her coffee cup was still half full. Lipstick print on the rim. I dumped it out, washed the cup, and stared at my reflection in the sink window. I looked the same. And that somehow made it worse. I wanted the man in the mirror to look different. Colder, smarter, less wrecked. I opened her laptop. We'd always had a loose understanding about privacy. Loose in the way long-term couples often do. Nothing written down, nothing explicit, just an inherited rhythm of trust. Or maybe just inertia. Her laptop password was the same as it had been 2 years ago. The name of a hotel we stayed at during our first vacation together. It still worked. I didn't open emails. Not yet. That felt noisy, easy to detect. Instead, I opened her browser history. There was a recent burst of activity late Saturday night, the night I came home. Hotel searches. Directions to a place I didn't recognize. A restaurant site open in one tab. A florist checkout page in another. She hadn't bought anything, at least not from what I could see. But she'd looked. That told me more than a receipt ever could. It wasn't a hookup. It was romantic. It was curated. And then I saw something else she'd searched for. "How long does wine stay open?" 10 minutes before I walked in that night. I closed the laptop carefully and went into the guest room. It used to be an office, back when I worked from home more often. Now it was just a graveyard for old paperwork and a printer that didn't print anymore. I pulled down the file box we kept joint financial records in and flipped to the folder marked Home Purchase. I looked at these documents a dozen times over the years. The bank statements, the down payment details, the wire confirmations. Everything had always made sense, until now. There was a deposit I'd forgotten about. $25,000 logged as a gift from friend. No name. Just initials. We'd had a conversation about it back then. She said it came from her cousin, the one in real estate who'd made a small fortune flipping condos. It had sounded plausible. She had a million cousins. I didn't press. But now, the initials stood out. Because they matched the ones I'd seen in that scribbled phone number napkin the night before. That night I asked her where she wanted to go for our anniversary. It was a test, not just of memory, but of tone. I wanted to see how quickly she could slide back into our shared myth, how convincingly she could look me in the eye and plan a celebration of something that was no longer real. Her eyes lit up like nothing was wrong. She suggested the beachside and we'd gone to last year. Said she loved the quiet, the sunsets. Said it with the same voice she used the first time. And I nodded, took her hand, even smiled. Let's do it, I said, because I wanted to see how far she'd go. How long she'd pretend we were still the couple in the photos on our hallway wall. Later that night, while she was brushing her teeth, I went into her car. She always left it unlocked in the garage. Trusted neighborhood, she said. I knew what I was looking for, even if I couldn't admit it to myself out loud. Something careless, something human, some small corner of truth she hadn't vacuumed clean. The first thing I saw was an empty wine bottle in the backseat footwell. No label. Cork still half wedged inside. The second thing was a crumpled paper bag with a printed receipt stapled to the side. From a restaurant in Midtown. 2 entrees. Date and time matched her. Girls' night. 2 weeks ago. But it wasn't the receipt that made my stomach turn. It was the handwritten note at the bottom, penned in ink right beneath the total. See you next time. You looked beautiful tonight. R. I took a photo of it. Left the bag exactly where I found it. Then I walked back upstairs, brushed my teeth beside her like I wasn't crumbling inside, and slipped into bed just in time to feel her hands slide across my stomach, searching for comfort. I let it rest there, motionless. Not because I wanted it. Because I needed to remember exactly how cold betrayal felt when it was warm. I spent the next 2 days in a version of our life that felt like theater. Rehearsed smiles, morning routines, shared dinners where I pretended to listen while she talked about her coworkers and a new marketing rollout I could barely process. She was good. I'll give her that. Polished. Consistent. There was no stammer in her voice, no guilty overcompensation. Just a woman living her life like she had nothing to hide. But it was all choreography now. Every movement had weight. Every detail felt curated for an audience, and I wasn't sure if I was the viewer or the performance. By Wednesday morning, I'd circled back to the initials on the mortgage deposit. RM. I'd seen them before, but not in any recent context. That morning, over coffee while she was upstairs, I pulled out an old envelope from a drawer in my office, the kind people stuff with holiday cards, forgotten bills, and receipts that never found their way into a folder. In the middle of it was a Christmas card, 5 years old, blue ink on thick ivory paper. A single sentence. Wishing you both peace and strength this year. RM. At the time, I remember asking who he was. She'd laughed, said he was a guy she dated briefly in college. Still sent the occasional card. No big deal. RM. Had been a ghost since then. Until now. I couldn't shake the number from the napkin. I finally dialed it from a burner app. Blocked line. 1 ring. Then voicemail. His voice was smooth, warm, familiar in a way I couldn't place at first. I didn't leave a message, but I did listen to the greeting 3 more times, trying to place where I'd heard that exact cadence before. And then it hit me. Years ago, during a party her firm hosted downtown, I'd met a man briefly near the bar. They were laughing when I walked up. He shook my hand, said something polite, and vanished into the crowd 10 minutes later. I'd forgotten his name. Now I remembered. RM. I didn't need a confrontation. I needed context. I needed scale. So I went to the bank. Nothing dramatic. Just a simple appointment to request statements from the first year we bought our home, things we already had, but I claimed I'd misplaced. The banker printed them without question. Smiled, asked about interest rates, offered a refinancing pamphlet. I nodded, thanked her, left. In my car, I flipped through the first page. The $25,000 transfer was logged on March 12th. Memo line. Closing gift. The origin was a holding account with a corporate name, not a person. But I recognized the LLC. I'd seen it before. It was the name of a company listed on a sponsorship banner at that same office party. Her firm's silent donor, the one they always referred to vaguely as private equity support. He hadn't just written a check, he was funding her firm. That night I asked her if she remembered that Christmas card from RM. She blinked thought for a second, That college guy? Yeah. She nodded. Wonder what happened to him. That was all she gave me. A flicker of recognition, immediately shuddered. Like flipping a switch off before the bulb warmed up. No mention of the money. No acknowledgement of the voice. No tell. I watched her turn back to the sink, humming as she rinsed off 2 plates. She started humming again. Not a song I recognized, but the same tune she was humming that night I walked into the house early from Chicago. Everything was beginning to loop back. She brought me tea before bed. Mint. No sugar. Just how I liked it. She smiled like nothing had shifted, like the last few days were just another quiet chapter in our marriage. I took the mug, thanked her, and kissed her hand, and I meant none of it. Because I wasn't looking at her the same way anymore. I wasn't even looking at her at all. I was looking through her, at the years we'd spent together, at the carefully curated narrative she'd written while I lived inside it. And I was beginning to realize something I hadn't dared believe. I may have never really known her at all. I couldn't sleep. She curled into me like always, same position, same quiet breathing, and I lay there stiff as stone, staring at the ceiling fan blades, measuring every second between each rotation like they might account for something. Some nights I counted her breaths. This night I counted all the moments I'd ignored. The moments I had rewritten in my head to preserve our peace. Like the time she was gone an extra 3 hours after a conference delay, and came home with her blouse buttoned wrong. Or the dinner we had where she kept checking her phone, smiling into it like she was seeing something she didn't want to share. I had made excuses for her. Worse, I had made them for myself. I woke up early and waited for her to leave. She took her gym bag that Friday morning, said she was heading to a morning class before work, kissed me on the temple. She smelled like oranges and eucalyptus, the same shampoo she used on our honeymoon. I used to love that scent. Now it hit me like a wave of nausea. She backed out of the driveway at 7:42. At 7:50, I called the gym. I didn't say I was her husband, just a polite question, wondering if they had her class scheduled today, wanted to make sure we were still on for the package. The girl on the phone was cheerful. Said her name wasn't on the list for anything today. In fact, she hadn't been in all week. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the wall. The lie wasn't just ongoing, it was practiced. It was routine. She told that one without blinking. And that made it worse than anything else so far. By noon, I was back at the financial records. I went deeper this time. Not just bank statements, but archived emails, PDFs, scanned documents. I found a folder I hadn't opened in years, back from when we were preparing the first budget for the house. It was titled simply, RM Grant. I didn't remember naming it. Inside were 2 documents, a wire transfer confirmation and a single-page signed statement. It was a gift legally. No repayment required. But the signature on the form? Robert M., full last name spelled out, with the same penmanship as that Christmas card. I finally had the full name. And now I had proof that this wasn't just an old college flame who sent warm wishes once a year. He was the man underwriting the life we built together. That night, I asked her if she wanted to go away for the weekend. I said I needed a break, from work, from stress. Suggested a cabin we'd once talked about visiting but never did. She smiled and said that sounded perfect. Said she'd cancel her brunch plans for Saturday. I didn't mention that I already knew there were no brunch plans. I booked the place. Sent her the reservation confirmation to her email. She texted back a heart emoji and 3 exclamation points. It was mechanical, like pressing a preset key on a keyboard. I asked if she wanted to pack light. She laughed and said I knew better. She'd probably bring 3 outfits for one night. And I said, right. Just in case he shows up. She froze. It lasted half a breath, but I saw it. A twitch at the corner of her mouth, a flick of the eye, before she smiled again and asked, what? I shook my head and played it off. Just teasing. But her laugh was too high-pitched. Her gaze didn't linger. The mask cracked, not enough to break, but enough to confirm what I already knew. I waited until she was in the shower. Her phone was on the charger in the kitchen. I didn't unlock it. I didn't have to. I went to the call log. The last outgoing number was labeled R. Just an initial. She'd called him an hour before I invited her to the cabin. No message. Just a call. That night, I lay in bed beside her, listening to the faint sound of rain outside the window, and something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger. I'd passed that point. I was staring into something deeper, a kind of internal silence that doesn't go away. The kind that settles behind your ribs and starts rearranging the person you were. I had no idea what kind of life I was living, only that it wasn't mine anymore. And the person lying beside me, the one wrapped in sheets and sleep and shared history, was someone I now believed capable of anything. We didn't speak much on the drive to the cabin. The road curved through woods and past quiet fields, all yellow and brittle from the dry spring. She stared out the window most of the way, occasionally pointing out something she thought I'd like. A small antique shop, a barn painted blue, a rusted truck covered in vines. I smiled when appropriate, nodded, said less than usual. I was thinking about her call to him, the one before she agreed to come. Was she warning him? Clearing time? Was he the reason she hesitated when I asked? She didn't ask why I wanted to go away. Didn't push. That was strange for her. She always pressed when something felt off, except now, when she should have. The cabin was just outside a tiny lakeside town. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, quiet deck out back. It was the kind of place you go to recharge, not talk. We unpacked. She opened a bottle of wine she brought. The same one we drank every anniversary, something expensive, with a name I always forgot but she loved. We sat on the deck that night, the lake black and still in front of us. She rested her head on my shoulder and sighed like everything was right in the world. I miss this, she whispered. I didn't answer. She looked up at me. You okay? I nodded. Just thinking. About what? Everything. She kissed my cheek. Try not to overthink this weekend, okay? It's just us. I stared out at the water and said nothing. Because I wasn't overthinking. I was confirming. The next morning, she stepped out for a walk while I stayed back and made coffee. As soon as she was out of view, I grabbed her purse from the counter. I'd checked her phone too many times without learning anything. I wanted something older. Something she wouldn't think to hide. At the bottom of her bag, under gum wrappers and a lipstick she hadn't worn in weeks, I found a folded piece of paper. A handwritten note. The ink was faded but legible. 5 years of lies and I'd do it again. You'll never tell him. You like this too much. R. There was no date. No envelope. Just that sentence. I stood there staring at it, the cabin around me going quiet as a tomb. She hadn't thrown it away. She'd kept it. She came back 30 minutes later, cheeks flushed, smiling. She brought croissants from a bakery down the road. Said she'd been chatting with a local woman about antique stores. I watched her set the box on the counter, open the cabinet for plates, hum the same melody I'd heard her hum the night I came home from Chicago. And then I said her name. She turned, still smiling. Yeah? I held the note between 2 fingers. Her face strained. She didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the paper like it was on fire. I stepped closer. Who is he? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. I already know, I said, my voice low. I just want to hear it from you. She blinked hard, like that would undo what she was seeing. She took a breath, opened her mouth, and then closed it again. When she finally spoke, it was a whisper. You don't understand. That made me laugh, quietly, bitterly. Then help me. Her hands dropped to her sides. The note fluttered to the floor between us. I didn't mean for it to be this long, she said. I stared at her. 5 years. She nodded once, eyes full of something that wasn't regret. It was darker, more tangled. She wasn't sorry. She was cornered. I could have ended it there. But I asked one more question. Why him? She looked me in the eyes. Because he knew who I was before I had to pretend. The silence after that felt like a scream. I turned away. She didn't try to stop me. She was still in the shower when I made the call. I sat on the bed, holding her phone, staring at the contact she'd labeled with a single letter, R. It rang twice. Then he answered, casual and calm, like he knew exactly who it was. I didn't introduce myself. I didn't need to. There was a pause. Then he laughed, low and unhurried. She finally tell you? I didn't answer. She said you'd call eventually. Said you probably already knew, that you just didn't want to admit it. Still, I said nothing. He exhaled, amused. She said you liked it. That it was your idea. That you liked knowing someone else had her. Then he added, almost as an afterthought. Said you weren't man enough to stop it. I hung up. When she stepped out, wrapped in a towel and humming softly, I was sitting in the same spot. I didn't move. I didn't look at her. She saw her phone in my hand, saw the look on my face, and the color drained from her skin before I said a word. There was no shouting, no emotional scene, just the thick, unmistakable weight of truth settling in the room between us. I told her I'd called him. She didn't deny it, didn't ask what he said. She just looked away. I didn't mean for it to last this long, she whispered. I stood and walked past her without a word. We left the cabin the next morning. The drive home was silent. She tried to ask me something once, but I didn't respond. There was nothing left to ask. She already knew what I was going to do. She just didn't know when. As soon as we got home, I opened my laptop and got to work. I compiled everything. The documents tying her to the financial trust, the wire transfers, the mortgage co-ownership, and a timeline of calendar entries matched against his travel history. I built the file carefully, clean, professional, no commentary. Then I sent it, directly to her firm's internal legal team. Marked confidential. No threats. No warnings, just the truth. In their language, not mine. I added one line in the email body. This is a conflict of interest disclosure. I believe your general counsel will want to review it. She found out that afternoon. Her leave from the company was immediate, pending review. I was on the porch when she came outside, phone in hand, trembling. You sent it, she said. I didn't answer. She sat down on the steps beside me. No makeup. No performance. For once, she looked like someone who didn't know what mask to wear. You ruined me, she said. I shook my head slowly. No. You did that the moment you rewrote me as someone who wanted to be humiliated. She didn't argue. She didn't have to. That night, she packed 2 bags and left. No tears. No final explanation. Just the sound of the front door clicking shut. I didn't follow her. I poured myself a drink, stood in the doorway of our bedroom, and stared at the bed I no longer recognized. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about authorship. She'd written a version of me that served her story. Quiet, weak, complicit. So I rewrote the ending. And I made sure it was the only version that would survive.